What's happening, everybody? It is so good to be back here in the States. You got that like little crisp morning air. You smell that, Laurie Horesh?
I can smell new paint in a new studio, but sure, crisp morning air.
Crisp morning air and gridiron football is in the air. Welcome to the NFL Brekkie Show 2024 NFL season preview prop bet special presented by Tab. He's Laurie Horesh. See, I'm rusty. Week one, I don't even know which way he is. He's Laurie Horesh. I'm Phil Murphy. Welcome back, friends, companions, in our new Wednesday morning slot where each week we're going to be chatting to you about all things NFL. And Laz, this is our week 0 season preview where we set on the table our expectations, things that we anticipate, our leanings, our biases for the NFL season to come.
It is. It's a time of year where we can really throw our prognostications and predictions out there, only to age terribly as the season goes along. I think right off the bat to last year, where perhaps my love for Trevor Lawrence may have got carried away just a touch, and we may have taken some leaps and bounds that didn't eventuate down there in Jacksonville. In the same token, this was a show that was very high on the likes of DJ Moore, and if you followed that train, it was a good, strong season for you. But the big question that we come into this time of year, and this is a couple of years doing this now, for those that are familiar with the show, friends of the show, long-time watchers, viewers, listeners of the show, will know that we like to ask one big question off the top, Phil, and that is, who got hot? Much like back in your childhood years when you went back in your schoolyard days, Phil, a young soccer star in multiple continents that you were. For me, just an overinflated ego and taking PE class too seriously. But back then, when you got back from school, first week, first day, there was obviously a little question around like, hey, who had a good summer? Who's come back? The new fashion is looking good, new wardrobe. Maybe they hit the gym. Maybe they got a town on a good holiday, new frames. Maybe they got something that, some new whatever it was, a new addition, a new change up that meant that, hey, they'd had a pretty good summer. For us, that was a different time of year, but the American system coming off summer now, going into the NFL season. So we want to know, as we cast our eyes across the NFL, who got hot, who leveled up, who's come in. But the drum beat, as we like to say, we mentioned that with Liz Lowe's last week on the fantasy preview special. You can go back and catch that if you haven't had your draft yet. You still got, 48 hours till go time. But we like to see who the momentum is building around, who's changed the narrative. So who got hot? Phil, no better way to start than ask the man himself that would have been strutting around in a medium back in high school all too often. Who got hot over summer?
Well, something that is close to my own heart is changing schools, changing locations here in the U.S. between kindergarten and year 12, 13 years. I went to 12 different schools. I moved around every year. So every year I was kind of the new kid in town. And I know that sometimes you want to go in and you try hard to impress. Some years you do, some years you don't. For me, somebody who I think got hot was somebody who's been pretty hot at his former locations, but for whatever reason, there's this anticipation that he's going to cool off. I'm going with Stefon Diggs. And again, this is our prop bet special. So I'm leaning into the over here. I'll give you a number. There's a market, Stefon Diggs on tab, 1,000 receiving yards. That pays $2.40. He's had 6 straight years over 1,000 receiving yards. And the last 5 of those, he exceeded that number handsomely. And I look at his first year going from Minnesota to Buffalo, endearing himself to Josh Allen, endearing himself to that fan base, doing all the right things on and off the field. And then, over 4 years, the honeymoon phase kind of wore off. His numbers didn't really regress. I don't think he's going to get the 150, 160 targets in Houston that he got in Buffalo. It's a far more balanced attack and perhaps the best crop of receivers in the entire NFL. The 1 to 4 does the Texans have, but given what they have with Nico Collins and Tank Dell and even Dalton Schultz at that end, you can't zero in on Stefon Diggs. He's going to get a lot of single coverage, a lot more opportunistic circumstances. And I think he and CJ Stroud are going to click in year 1. Now, what happens beyond that? Stefon Diggs coming out in recent hours saying like, oh, there were no problems in Minnesota and Buffalo. I just had to shake things up. That's not a great reputation to have. But in year 1, honeymoon phase in Houston, I like him to clear 1,000 yards comfortably. I'm thinking 1,100 or 1,200 yards for Diggs. I'm very bullish on him. Plus odds, $2.40 for 1,000. Stefon Diggs got hot.
It's a controversial take. I think you're bucking the trend there. You're bucking consensus. It's contrarian, to be quite honest, a lot of love for Nico Collins, Tank Dell healthy again. Those are the younger, very explosive names. We saw the chemistry that they had instantly with CJ Stroud last year, and you're putting faith in the veteran old head to come in there. 1,000 yards, obviously, in over a 17-game season and 18-week regular season schedule is, I'm not going to say it's not what it used to be, but literally by math, it's not what it used to be, because that's how math works.
That's what we need, Stefan.
That's it. The math going to math. So I like that you're stepping out here. I think mine is probably a little more in line with some of the more consensus drum beats that we've been picking up. But Phil, if I told you that Kyler Murray hadn't hit 4,000 passing yards in his NFL career before, one, would that surprise you? And two, as the statistician that you are, would that be correct?
I mean, I assume it's correct. I'm trusting you. 4,000 is not, and it's not a total you sneeze at. With the 17th game, it's going to become, over 17th game's a few years old. It'll become more commonplace. But Kyler's dealt with some injuries. He's electric with his feet. Not known as a prolific volume passer. So I trust you. I'm not entirely surprised. Should I have trusted you?
As you can see, the trust is there right off the bat. I know it's week 0, but we're already in mid-season form. Yes, he has never hit the 4,000-yard mark. His peak was 3,971 yards in the year 2020. But what has changed? You want to talk about something getting hot. How about the Arizona Cardinals passing attack? We saw, as Kyler made his way back into more healthy form last year, Trey McBride emerged. You do have a talented receiving option there in Michael Wilson, who does have ties to the Asia-Pacific region down in this part of the world. And then, obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. stepping into the fold. I don't think the Arizona Cardinals defense is going to overwhelm anyone. We know
might be the worst in the league. Might be the worst in the league.
But they also might punch above their weight, as they're known to do on occasion with some of the wild schemes we've seen in recent seasons for the Arizona Cardinals. But they're not going to be an overwhelming defense. It's going to be looking to grind out wins 18-15. That'd be a weird score. Not sure if it's a scoregami. That is one that I know tickles your fancy. So I'm going Kyler Murray over or 4,000 yards or more passing. You're going to get that one currently at tab as of this morning. You're going to get that mark at, believe it or not, $3.50. So I don't mind the value there at all with the improved weapons. And I should say, I mentioned those names in through the aerial attack. Mavarati, Marvin Harrison Jr., if that's the name we're settling on. Okay. Trey McBride, Michael Wilson. But then from a receiving back standpoint, we know James Conner can be productive and create some yards after the catch working out of the backfield. And so can Trey Benson. If Benson does get an opportunity, as he works in, the rookie out of Florida State, super explosive, has some real straight line speed, quite a violent runner when you do see him trying to just the cuts that he's able to produce at his size and speed combination. So I think there's a nice ability for some weapons that extend just beyond Marvin Harrison, who gets the headlines, to take Kyler over there. You mentioned we're into that 17-game era. So 4,000 yards through the air or more for Kyler Murray, who's also starting to get a little, there's just from the out, we'll touch on some MVP stuff later on. There's a little bit of buzz as well. Is this a guy with an outside shot?
Sure, we'll get to that, but we can bottle up your wide receiver analysis for a point I have coming up later in the show. This is the People's Show, and I see Brad Bolt, friend of the program, already joining the chat. Good morning, fellas. Phil, great to see you again, and same with you, Laz. Brad, not burying the lead. He's got the order correct. He is in mid-season form. Speaking of a team,
I'll flip that by the end of this show.
The season in mid-season form. Who got hot? Laz, this doesn't have to be, she's all that, right? We don't have to go from a team, somebody middling or struggling, and that levels up. For me, who got hot? I'm going to go with the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Their market right now for their win total to get over 11.5 wins. They had 11 a season ago. So to improve year over year is $1.75. I love that value because, again, this team went 11-6 last year with a few things. 2 head-scratching division losses, one at home to the Raiders on Christmas Day, another to the mighty Denver Broncos, a team that they had owned for a long bit of time. Kansas City this season with Bo Nix has got excitement in Mile High City. Denver's got a lot of holes on that roster. For the Raiders, their combination, their quarterback running back duo might be the worst kind of collective there, all due respect, in the NFL. And for the Chargers, you could say the same thing about their defensive line, their off-ball linebackers. A lot of weaknesses on those teams around the Chiefs. I think they go 6-0 in the division. And I think, Laz, this is a team that last year left a lot of meat on the bone. We had 25 drops from wide receivers alone. If it sounds like a lot, it is. It's the most of a wide receiving core, not just in the NFL last season, but the most of any wide receiving core since the Jags of 2012. What happened? They add Hollywood Brown, they add Xavier Worthy in the draft. Now, L'Jarius Sneed being absent in that secondary is going to be a painful thing for the Chiefs, and I'll get to that point later as they are in our opening game Friday morning on ESPN opposite the Ravens, following an episode of NFL Blitz with myself and Sam Acho for that one. So I think last year where the Chiefs were kind of a barely above average offense with an elite defense for much of the season, and then Travis Kelce found the fountain of youth in the playoffs and the offense started clicking. I think it's going to be kind of the Chiefs team we've become accustomed to this year with the incendiary offense, the defense that's fine. That's nothing to strike terror like they did a year ago, even with Steve Spagnuolo. But I'll say Kansas City, 12-5 is your floor. KC got hot over 11.5 wins at $1.75.
Okay, I've got a couple of points here. One, a lot of KC chat off the bat, which welcomes in producer JT for this season, also known as our Minister for Gen Z or Minister of Gen Z Affairs. He's going to love that being a Chiefs fan. Also, Phil basically picking someone who left last year with Peter Andre abs and walks back into this season with Peter Andre abs as someone who got hot. But that's all right. You're absolutely right. There's no hating on the Chiefs in this side of the show.
I said they're going to improve their win total.
You did. Okay. On that, look, the receivers for the Chiefs didn't just drop balls last year. They dropped wins. Straight up game clinching drops.
MVS.
And Brad agrees there. The Chiefs released Kadarius Toney. That's like 2 additional wins there, isn't it? Yeah, basically. And Brad, I'm going to get to you in a second because I think I'm going to flip your priorities there between Phil and myself in a heartbeat. But look, I think it's when you look at this market and you look at what the Kansas City Chiefs did, you look at their early returns on their rookie left tackle. It's hard to pick great amounts of holes in this team. You mentioned they did lose L'Jarius Sneed, but the way that team's been drafting and the way that they're able to maintain a sense of both stability and it's almost like a stable willingness to evolve. That's not meant to be an oxymoron there, but they've moved in different eras. We saw them go into more of a ball control, less Tyreek Hill. Well, Tyreek Hill moved on, less 75-yard bombs downfield and more of a meticulous offense built with a really good defense on the other side. Now we've seen them move back to the speed side of things with who they've added, constantly moving the goalposts for what defenses have to focus in on. All right, my second one here, and I mentioned we're going to, Brad, friend of the show, big Carolina Panthers fan. For me, my second who got hot. Now you said it's not always a, was it She's All That you referenced?
Yeah.
It's not always that dramatic, a transformation, at least portrayed that way. Sometimes it is. And someone who needed something that needed to get hot was someone from that Carolina Panthers receiving game, something for Bryce Young. So I am going to moving from Marvin Harrison Jr. with all the headlines. I'm going to someone that if you're in fantasy drafts, he's not getting anywhere near as much hype as some other names, but Deontay Johnson to go for 1,000 yards or more through the air. I think he's on slate to get about 360 targets from Bryce Young in Carolina. That is also paying, similarly to my first one, that is currently at $3.50 on tab. I think Deontay Johnson is going to be peppered nonstop. Is he the biggest touchdown maker in the world? No, but this isn't a touchdown mark. This is a receiving yardage market. I think he's going to see double-digit targets routinely. Again, another team, if we're looking at game scripts, not the worst defense in the world in Carolina, but again, not a defense that I think is going to throttle high-powered offenses down and turn these things into a slugfest. So there's going to be passing scripts. There we go. I've already flipped. There we go. Great stuff. My guy. There we go. Laurie already on top. One for Loz, none for Phil.
Already, over there.
Yeah, already blown your advantage there. So that's where I'm looking at this one. It can't get much worse than what we saw for Bryce Young, both from a protection standpoint and all it was Adam Thielen running veteran routes last year. I expect better, and I expect that to start with the former Steeler, Deontay Johnson, who, Bryce Young didn't give a lot of positive signs in an awful situation last year, but I still think there's a very strong chance that Deontay Johnson is upgrading his quarterback situation from what he went through in 2023 and what was still there in Pittsburgh and is there right now with what we've seen so far from Russell Wilson getting the starting job over Justin Fields to what could emerge there in Carolina.
Yeah, and Carolina did invest in the offensive line in the offseason. I think their offensive line could be above average, even top third of the league by the time all said and done. And Dave Canales is an interesting
Mhm.
fit for head coach. He's also going to be the play caller in Carolina. And we saw what he did last year as OC in Tampa with a
Correct.
quarterback who a little bit diminutive in Baker Mayfield. But Canales, he's like, hey, I don't care who the personnel are. Sorry, I don't care what my preference is in play calling. I'm going to play to the personnel and play to their strengths.
Mhm.
And for this team, for Bryce Young, it's going to be moving the pocket, release the ball. He gave a number, 2.7 seconds. Get the ball out quickly. And for a guy like Deontay Johnson that could play to his strengths for a lot of catch and run scenarios, and for a team where the game script is probably going to be playing from behind more often than not.
Absolutely. Now I do, we're trading barbs back and forth because it is right off the bat. It's week 0. No point in wasting time, but I do want to offer up some support from the masses for you, Phil, from our Instagram comment section. Luke says people are getting sour on Stephon Diggs, the bloke, and incorrectly transferring that to the player. The player hasn't dropped off. We have support.
Can we get a Gen Z
Phil,
translation for this? Because
Phil, you can go that all you want. We're asking a lot of our minister.
Put it on
for
TikTok.
Gen Z off the back. Oh, there we go. Okay, Phil. We have so that is who has gotten hot. That's who we feel is coming back from summer break, feeling a certain way, looking a certain way, and changing the narrative. So we go from who got hot, and now it's time for popular demand, where you and me are going to go through our chain movers, our just move the sticks, our short price props. There we go. There we go. Now he's really trying to appeal to Gen Z right now. So we're going to go with our chain movers to start. Then we've got some
do you want to explain why this is on this side of the Pacific Ocean?
Please go educate everybody.
As your reigning, defending, undisputed, even though Laws disputed the length of the national anthem,
Still
popular demand champion from the NFL season 2023. This is my title belt, and heavy is the head that wears the belt.
Luckily, there's a good sizable head to bear that weight. We are going to start off with our chain movers. We will move on to some chunk gains, those kind of 15-yard dig routes, the mid-tier ones that range from the $2 to $5 price range. And then to close out, we're going to arc that thing back. We're going to lean back and let it fly deep downfield with some deep strikes, some long shot odds that we have to look at. And these aren't ones just to not listen and these guys are just being silly. They're just throwing some random darts here and there. We had one last year, which was the Miami Dolphins, I believe at 21-1, was it, Phil?
$21, so 20-1.
There we go. We were way up there last year to be the highest scoring offense in the league. They led the way through 17 of 18 weeks. And unfortunately, as we know, week 18 causes all sorts of craziness, whether you're having a flutter, whether you're in your fantasy league and for some reason still playing in week 18. Unfortunately, that fell at the last hurdle, but we do see things here. We had a good year last year, popular demand. It was our best season yet. I think we had a 10 to 12 week absolute hot run there. So let's move it over. Phil, you're moving the chains. It's 3rd and 2. You need 2.5 yards to get a fresh set of downs. Where are you turning first?
Laz, I hate this one because it's a quarterback I like. It's a team I was high on last year, pick them to win their division a year ago. Jacksonville to miss the playoffs at $1.58. So under $2. That number surprised me. I thought, I was like, man, that's not a terrific payout. But then you start breaking it down. A pass block win rate over the last 2 seasons, worst in the NFL. Cannot protect Trevor Lawrence. And they get rid of Calvin Ridley. This is a team that was as reliant as any on the NFL in terms of percentage of passing yards outside the numbers, 29%. That led the NFL. You get rid of Calvin Ridley. Christian Kirk's your new wide receiver 1. Didn't really fix, for me, the O-line issues. And I look at Houston, who surprised a lot of people a year ago, coming on strong at the end. I think I already mentioned Stephon Diggs. I think their trajectory is going to continue mightily into the 2024 season. In Indianapolis, if Anthony Richardson stays healthy, this is a team that's going to contend with the Jags in that division. AFC wildcard projects to be deep. I don't see Jacksonville getting to double-digit wins, and at 9-8 in the AFC, you're on the outside looking in. Give me the Jags to miss the playoffs at $1.58.
Oh, they were part of the training camp tour. They were the reason, that we had to.
And look what they did. They cursed themselves. You go talk to Adam Gotsis, and then they cut him.
Yeah, and Pat Murtaugh suffering a nasty lower leg injury.
And it was a hurricane when you were there. You almost got stuck in Jacksonville.
Yep, but Hop Tingers, an interesting place to go visit on a stormy Saturday night. Okay. As much as I have a lot of love for plenty of the players down there in Jacksonville. Doug Peterson was great to chat to. There's more of that coming on across all ESPN Australia.
I hope I'm wrong. I like the team. I like the players on it.
I know. It's tough to say. But it is an absolute battleground that isn't that a topical word in the year 2024. It is a battleground division, the AFC South. between what's going on. You touched on Jacksonville there, but with the Houston Texans who have all the hype in the world. You have the Indianapolis Colts with Anthony Richardson coming back and Shane Steichen getting a lot of love and reverence for his ability as a play caller or a coach and what they're setting up there, as well as some of the talent that they're sprinkling in on the defensive side of things. And then the Tennessee Titans, and can they be friskier than everyone imagines? And that's where I'm going to go to right now. The Tennessee Titans, an old friend of mine, Tony Pollard, to go 750 yards rushing or more is an even $2 to 1. Why would I do this? It's a split backfield between himself and Tyjae Spears. We know this. Tony Pollard in their last outing with the starters definitely got the early and often run with that full starting lot. It was him early, him featured through the air, him featured through the ground. Through the ground is what we're focusing on here. If you don't know much about the Callahans that have taken over as their head coaching as their head coach, and not just head coach, because Brian Callahan has brought his father, Bill Callahan, who in some parts of the NFL is known as Run Game Moses. This is an offensive line guru who has crafted, created, and opened up craters of offensive line pathways, alleyways, hallways, and runways for running backs to fly into open gaps for many and many a decade now. Highly respected offensive line mastermind. And what he can do for a run game. So I think that Tony Pollard, now healthy, further removed from that nasty injury that really did scuttle him for so much of last season. And it was an inefficient, ineffective, and disappointing year for Tony Pollard with the Dallas Cowboys, and for that run game for a lot of the season. I expect a healthier version. I expect a really well coached, well schemed, and we've seen the assets that they have plowed into that offensive line over there in Tennessee. Talent, opportunity, scheme, play calling, coaching. I think it all adds up for Tony Pollard to go past 750 yards at an even 2 to 1.
Yeah, I am curious how Brian Callahan himself, he's head coach, he's going to be the play caller. He was OC in Cincinnati and didn't call plays there last year, but he was on staff offensively for the Seahawks Super Bowl 48 with Russell Wilson, the Broncos Super Bowl 50 with Peyton Manning. So they're really excited about the development of Will Levis, but the reason I'll back you on this tip is that that offensive line, Lloyd Cushenberry at the center coming over from the Broncos, J.C. Latham, the first-round pick out of Alabama,
loved him,
tackle, and Peter Skronsky gets a year older at left guard. So a lot of reason to like their offensive line, and they bring in Calvin Ridley as well. So it's not like opponents can stack the box because you have to respect the talent they have out wide. Tony Pollard, an explosive runner. A kid who went to college in Memphis, going to be kind of a homecoming for him. So I like that a lot. Laz, the medium range for our tips for properly demand is that $2 to $5 range. This is your first and 10. You're trying to make it a second and 2, second and 3 type situation where you're setting yourself up to move the sticks.
Whoa, Jason Garrett, calm down with your overexcited play calling over there.
Hey, listen, I'm going $3.25 here, but I'm echoing a tip from your Who Got Hot. And I'm going with our boy Maserati Marv to go over 1,250 receiving yards as a first year rookie. He looked magnificent in the preseason, a precise route runner, all the tools you would want out of a receiver. He has the ability, I think, to step in and within short order be a top 10 receiver in this league. And he goes into a situation for a team that said goodbye to Rondale Moore, said goodbye to Hollywood Brown. All due respect to our Kiwi friends, Michael Wilson, Jamaican Kiwi background for Wilson, he's their top returning wide receiver in terms of receptions at 38 catches. And they don't have a guy on this roster now, wide receiver or tight end, who had 5 touchdowns a year ago. And there are 53 dudes in the NFL who had at least 5 receiving touchdowns. The Cardinals have none remaining on their roster. Maserati Marv's going to come in. We mentioned their defense stinks. I think their defense is the worst in the NFL, in my opinion. So they're going to be playing from behind a lot of chunk yardage. So I think Marvin Harrison Jr. comes in instantly, 1,300 yards, 1,300 plus, $3.25. I love that for a medium bet. I went receiver last year on this. I tipped Tyreek Hill over 1,500 yards at $3 even. That hit by freaking December 1st. I don't know if this one's going to hit as comfortably, but I think Maserati Marv is going to be an instant impact in the desert.
This was our sweet spot last year. This was the DJ Moore territory. This was the Tyreek Hill territory. And if you followed these ones, there was great value there. We've spoken a lot. I mean, how about the teams that we're giving some attention to? Everyone's to talk. Yeah, we opened with the Kansas City Chiefs. But everyone's talking about the Green Bay Packers, the Detroit Lions, the Baltimore Ravens, that. What have we talked about so far? The Arizona Cardinals, the Carolina Panthers, the Tennessee Titans, the Jacksonville. We're in there. We're in there in the South.
My next two tips are two of the teams you complained about us mentioning too often. So let's not get too excited about.
Okay, all right, okay. Well,
teams.
it's week 1. It's week 0. I am a little excited. Okay, my mid-tier one. We're going from $2 there, maxing out my short yardage chain mover to a hefty $2.35 for my chunk gain.
Okay,
this is a chunk gain. This might be like a 9-yard out route, but we're still going to take it. We're going to go to Washington, where Jaden Daniels, the offensive line is a question mark, shall we say. The wide receiving core, well, we know Scary Terry McLaurin is there. There's been some positive buzz about De'Ami Brown, but we know there's been some changing faces. Your old friend, Jahan Dotson, getting shipped out of town and into the same division over there with the Philadelphia Eagles now. In the past 2 seasons during his college run, where they play less games, this is insight you're not going to find in many places, Phil. They play less games in college than they do in the NFL.
Wow.
Jaden Daniels, double-digit touchdowns the past 2 seasons at LSU. Jaden Daniels has ridiculous speed. I think he is someone that does not necessarily hang out in the pocket for ages and go through a litany of 1, 2, 3, 4 reads, back to 3, back to 2, 1. Is there a 5? This is someone that at times will tuck and run, and I think 6+ rushing touchdowns is on the card. I don't think he's going to be overwhelmed by his receiving options. I think it might be more of a 1-2. Let's get going. Not to mention, I think there'll be plenty of chances for opposition pass rushers to flush him from the pocket when they do get down into scoring opportunity. If he showed this at LSU, we've even seen a little bit of it in preseason so far. If he gets an alleyway at any point of the field and decides to turn on the Jets, that is serious speed he has. So 6+ touchdowns, rushing touchdowns this season. You can get that at $2.35 with Tab. I think a lot of opportunity. We do see rookie quarterbacks, and this is not a shot at all. We see rookie quarterbacks that do have that dual threat capability, and he has special running speed and explosiveness. They do use that as a bit of a fallback when things do speed up on them or things break down early in this career, perhaps when they don't have the seasoning to be able to overcome it with pre-snap recognitions or knowing the cheat codes on certain route concepts. So let's go. Jaden Daniels, 6+ rushing touchdowns.
Lasma, I think their offensive line is improved, bringing in Tyler Biadasz, who'll be playing.
Yeah, who is, it's like going from bad to okay, which is important, but it's bad to okay.
Bad to middle of the road, which is an improvement. Not everybody can do the Houston Texans overnight. Some people are saying, oh, this is the Nick Caserio model. What Washington's doing. Pump the brakes. I think they're a comfortable third in the division. My only concern for your 6 rushing touchdowns is the running backs they have. Brian Robinson is strong legs. I think they'll trust him in a lot of those, inside the 2-yard line scenarios. And Austin Eckler, we know what he can do out of the backfield. So I agree with the absence of receiving options. Olamide Zaccheaus is their wide receiver 2. Zach Ertz is their primary tight end. This offense isn't going to put up. I don't think they're going to have a ton of red zone possessions. That's my only concern. It's why you're getting false odds on it.
Thankfully, he might be able to do it. He might be able to do it from 40 yards out. That's all.
I'm going to stay away from your medium bet. That's
right. I will say that I do concede what you said about Brian Robinson Jr. Those I drafted against in fantasy this year know that I do have some affinity for Brian Robinson Jr., but I won't lean as much with the Austin Eckler side of things because
Austin Eckler's more your like second and goal swing route type deal, where it's just like he could get a look, and
he could get a look. Singular. Okay.
I think a lot of it just comes down to I don't think they're going to have a lot of red zone possessions. I'd be surprised if this team finished, top 25 in total offense. I think they're really going to struggle to move the ball. I think Jaden Daniels will show promise, but this isn't the Texans where you microwave a playoff team. It's going to be hard yards, as they say in the nation's capital. Laz, but we got to air it out. We got to go long. All these $2 and $3 bets, and that. Let's get some big money. And it's a play I'm making. This is not my pick to win the Super Bowl, but I think there's loads of value on the number. The number to me is meaty. This is our long. This is $10 or more, and I'm going all the way up to $19. Go, Pat, go. The Green Bay Packers to win the Super Bowl pays $19. This is a team that was night and day difference, excuse me, first to second half of the season a year ago. And Matt LaFleur said, he's the team's play caller. He's like, we were looking for more explosive plays, and I wasn't giving Jordan Love the opportunity to make explosive plays with explosive play calling. He took the leash off. He took the reins off and said, go get him. What happened? Green Bay won 6 of its last 8 regular season games. I'll remind you what happened in the wild card round, Laws. They blew the doors off the Cowboys.
Sorry, what?
Then they go to San Francisco, and they were up late on the 49ers. That was neck and neck with the team that went into overtime in the Super Bowl. The youngest roster of core core talent, on-ball talent on their offense, youngest core of that in the NFL, gets a year older, adds Josh Jacobs. Tough division with Detroit. I mean, they can make this run from the wild card, but they're my tip to win the NFC North, and I think there's magnificent value at $19 for Green Bay to win the Super Bowl. And if they get there, you have an opportunity to hedge. Don't cash out. Hedge. Bet the other side. The number's always better. So if you put 1 unit, you're 19-1, and you just want to hedge a little bit, fine on the other side. I love Green Bay. They're my tip to come out of the NFC. So you're giving me $19 for them to win the Super Bowl. I'm all over.
The current defensive regime there can get at least some modicum of talent out of all the invested picks there, some more than what we saw in the much maligned previous.
And to that point, Jeff Hafley comes over from Boston College, and he immediately switches from a 3-4 to a 4-3 because they're really thin at off-ball linebacker. So now you play to the strengths of an interior defensive line. You mask some of the concerns they have at linebacker. And I don't see a weakness in this offense. I think they're average or above average every area of the offense.
Yeah, I don't think look, all we need is an improvement in the efficiency of talent to actual play than what we saw under Joe Barry. And I think that your bet is taking massive positive steps on a deep run. Before we get to our next segment, couple things. I've got one more pick, which is going to segue beautifully in there. And 2, this is the People Show. There's hundreds, and I mean hundreds of people in here watching along. If you do have your favorite props, if you do have your comments, if you do have judgments on me and Phil's analysis, our thoughts on certain prop bets, or even our fashion, please feel free to throw it in.
It looks like I'm wearing gold overalls. If people have just joined us, this is my chain from Vegas.
Yeah, we're going to have a little sit down, I think, with JT, the Minister of Gen Z Affairs, after that, and just check in on that one. But if you do have anything to send in, send it through the comments. My last one here, as we look to, I love little next-gen stats. If we're looking at lift our air yards to the sticks, AYTS, favorite metric, really bump that number up. Okay, I'm going 15-1 here, and I'm teasing where we're headed next. I'm going to go with a Coach of the Year nomination here. And I'm going to go with the man in Indianapolis, Shane Steichen. What they could do, the Indianapolis Colts, with a returning Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, we know about this. Michael Pittman, Adonai Mitchell, who has looked very promising in the early stages there as an Indianapolis Colt. When we do get Josh Downs, hopefully we see him fit and healthy and hitting full flight, explosive talent in the slot. Steichen, who I think we saw with the brain drain out of the Philadelphia Eagles and how good a game he calls. His feel for play calling, his feel for offensive design, what he can do as the mastermind, not just of that team as a whole, but that offense. I think you'd absolutely put himself in position. Already got a lot of respect with how competitive he kept the Colts without Richardson last year. Gets that talent back, adds to it. I think this is someone who could absolutely make a run. And that's the benefit, because this is a narrative award. And when you do miss out on the playoffs because of a drop on a play call on 4th down that was well designed, took a lot of gumption, a lot of chutzpah to throw that one out there. When you do miss out on the playoffs, it does create that easy narrative jump. If the Colts do throw themselves in there, whether they're the division winner in the AFC South or they throw themselves in as an AFC wildcard and cause a little noise, this is definitely, you can see the roadmap ahead for how he picks up momentum. So that's at $15-1. That is a long shot. While we are here, John Roberts, his favorite ticket is Drake London over 1,000 yards. He got that a little while ago. He loves Drake London going over there down in Atlanta, not just with one quarterback for John. He's got 2, and 2 potentially decent ones with what they're operating down there with Kirk Cousins for now, and who knows about Michael Penix Jr. But Drake London, look, this is a numbers favorite. This is a stats analytics film favorite. Everyone saw what Drake London presented as a receiver in his own work last season, how it was used, how he was found by whoever the Falcons were rolling
Well,
out.
quickly going on Drake London, Zach Robinson's going to be calling plays in Atlanta. He comes over as the quarterback coach and passing game coordinator. Didn't call plays in LA, but he was intricately involved in what they did in the passing game as the passing game coordinator. We saw in the last 2 seasons what it looked like to be a Rams wide receiver one, running 11 personnel 93% of the time. I expect a lot of that in Atlanta. So Drake London being the wide receiver one, I think he's going to get more than enough targets. I love that tip. For 1,000.
I can say Drake London right now, 1,000+ receiving yards. You're getting that at $1.65. And if you wanted to push it up to the $12.50 number that Phil liked for Marvin Harrison Jr., that's at $3.50 for Mr. London. The other comment that we have here, Brad's coming in. He's gone over to tab it. If you multi Lawrence, Dak, Goff, Stroud, Tua, and Mahomes all to throw for over 4,000 yards,
YOLO.
that's getting just shy of 28-1. So thank you, Brad, for an absolute heat seeker. He gets like I said, we're lifting those air yards right now. Brad got it. Lean back and absolutely send it. But that is the first part of popular demand for today. We'll circle back a little bit later. But Phil, we go from popular demand, and now it's time to have a look at some of those big awards. It is awards season, or at least it's awards prediction season. Who do you have leading off? What's your first award prop that you're taking a look at here?
Well, we kind of structured this as such, Laws, as my chain wants to fall over, take out my water bottle, and topple everything I have going over here. The first tip we have is Super Bowl winner. And I have said I like Kansas City over 11.5 wins at $1.75. Who got hot? Kansas City. Laws, as much as I want to be cute with it, as I sit here today, I think they're going to be the 1 seed in the AFC. I don't see who in the AFC goes into Arrowhead and beats them. If there is a team, I would tip the Texans. But I'll take Kansas City to win the Super Bowl at $6.50. I know I said, I'm playing Green Bay to win the Super Bowl at $19. Right, I'm doing both bets. So you have them, and then that's your payout. So if Kansas City wins, if Green Bay wins and I bet on Kansas City, then $19 becomes $9.50. And same thing with the Chiefs, $6.50 becomes $3.25. As I sit here today, Kansas City fixing their offensive issues with sure-handedness. Only concern, there were long spurts of the regular season that Travis Kelce looked old last season. I wonder if Patrick Mahomes' secret behind the back outlet regresses again. But with bringing in even a Samaje Perine and how prolific he is out of the backfield and all the screens that Kansas City runs, it's a schematic nightmare now, again, offensively for teams to stop. Kansas City's my Super Bowl tip at $6.50.
Hard to go away from Kansas City Chiefs. We've absolutely heaped the respect on them over recent years, deservedly so.
9 primetime games on ESPN, by the way.
You will not miss them, and we will get to a little more Kansas City talk as we move on. My first one here, as we're picking Super Bowl, I'm going a little bit further down, but I'm staying at the number I just mentioned, 15-1. All aboard the hype. I think the Houston Texans are going to come out of the AFC South absolutely battle-tested, ready to go and charge into the AFC playoffs. Just not worn down, but well worn from a tough conference, an increasingly tough division, very tough conference. But I am picking at 15-1 the Houston Texans to be our Super Bowl champions. Love the defensive talent they put together, both from the young, homegrown stuff. Jalen Petrie in full missile form in 2023. There's been some questions of should he just tone it down a little. Well, if you saw him in preseason, if you're wondering if any of that reckless abandon has gone away, absolutely not the way he was charging in the games that don't even count yet. But we know Devin Singletary primed to break out. They found some answers at linebacker there. Up front defensively, the talent that they've added in the trenches. You go out and add someone like a Danielle Hunter and the impact, the game closing, game shutting down. This is a pass rush with closing ability who can shut things down in the key points of the game. I think they're built, they're ready. D'Amico Ryan's worth, certainly another one you could look at for Coach of the Year. Had a real crack, in my opinion, should have got it in 2023. So much is set up there. So that is my pick at 15-1. Some pretty lofty odds, but I'm going to put my chips in there for the Houston Texans.
Laws, I mean, I said it off the top with Diggs, and even in our pre-show meeting, forget off the top, I said I was tempted to mention Houston to win the AFC at $9, perhaps being better value than Kansas City to win the Super Bowl at $6.50. The only reason the tip I gave is that Kansas City's strength of schedule, at least in divisional games, has far fewer potholes than does Houston's. Houston actually has the third most difficult strength of schedule, if memory serves. It's a tough schedule, and I think the world of them. I think they are the likeliest team to dethrone the Chiefs. I just worry that if Houston goes 12-5, Kansas City goes 13-4, and then Stroud's got to go through Arrowhead in an AFC Championship game, I would lean on experience straight up there. But I like where your head's at. So much so, Laurie Horesh. My pick, as we continue our awards tips here on this NFL Brekkie Show 2024 season preview. Prop betting spectacular brought to you by Tab. My MVP pick is CJ Stroud at $10 even. A guy who missed 2 games last year and still went 4,100 yards. A guy who went 23 touchdowns and 5 picks. That is Aaron Rodgers' level of touchdown to interception ratio with a 4,000-yard season. And don't forget, he inexplicably had 3 picks in a game against the Cardinals. 2 touchdowns, 3 picks in that game. So outside of that, 21 touchdowns, 2 picks over the course of the season, and you add Stephon Diggs to that, I like this guy to go for 4,800 yards, win 12 games, and win a division. Narrative last year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, year 1, keeps himself in that elite QB category, propelling the Texans to a division title and immediate contention in the AFC. I like him as your MVP at $10.
I'm going to go a little further down the chart there, as much as look, I just spoke glowingly about the Texans. We've done that a number of times through the show, so I absolutely see the merit and the legitimacy to that candidacy and that nomination, that pick there. I'm going to go a little further down to Matthew Stafford with the LA Rams. You and me have talked about the Rams a little bit over the off season. One of the teams that I was lucky enough to visit on training camp tour. Again, we're going to have tons of content flowing through that for the first half of the season that you can catch across different ESPN, Australia, New Zealand platforms. Matthew Stafford, look, if you've seen aging on that arm, congratulations, but I have not, through what we've seen on field over the years. Even a couple of years ago when there's questions about, there was elbow issues, there's all sorts. The man can still absolutely spin it to every single corner of the field. He opens up the playbook. You look at that Rams offensive line, the investment up front, perhaps the biggest, strongest interior offensive line in the NFL. Kyron Williams in the backfield, Blake Corum in the backfield, Cooper Kupp, you expect back and healthier than last year. And of course, Puka Nacua, little bit of a knee issue in preseason, but looks like he'll be ready to go for week 1. So much talent across the board there on offense. Defensively, we know they've had some talent that has emerged. Again, you look at the homegrown side of things when it is like a Byron Young or a Kobe Turner that have flashed, or more than flashed, but have shown that there are sparks of talent emerging in the post-Aaron Donald world, but it is a post-Aaron Donald world. This is a defense that I don't want to write them off, but again, not a unit that you expect is just going to shut things down. So I think the Rams will have to chuck it a bunch. They will be a high-scoring offense. They will, in my opinion, be a playoff team. I think they win at least one playoff game. And Matthew Stafford has a chance to put up some truly phenomenal numbers. We're talking 5,000. We're talking over 40 passing touchdowns. That talent is there for him to work with, as well as in that prodigious right arm of his and his ever underrated football brain.
Yeah, as I mentioned moments ago, that I think the Cardinals have the worst defense in the NFL. If somebody hopped in the chat and said, no, the Rams have a worse defense, I'm not going to fight you. I think it's very similar. I'm a sucker for a good off-ball linebacker, and their group is probably the worst in the league. So you're going to have a lot of these Rams games that are 34-31, 4 touchdown passes for Matthew Stafford. I think he pushes for 5,000 yards. And in terms of volume, I think he will be in contention there and in the conversation, especially if the Rams can somehow, some way usurp the 49ers to win the NFC West.
At 34-1 as well, you got to love that number.
Absolutely. And again, that's a market too. You can take a little nibble at now. And then again, if you're going to have a punt, please do so responsibly. A little nibble at it now. And if we get to mid-season, you can kind of see the lay of the land and make sure there's not, insane numbers for Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow or something like that, or CJ Stroud at $10. And then, attack that even if the number has dropped a little bit. Laz, let's move to rookies of the year. This is not like MVP. It's not a quarterback-only award. We've seen a handful of wide receivers win Offensive Rookie of the Year in recent years. But that said, I'm going to the guy at the top of the list in Caleb Williams at $2.25. What the investment that the Bears made across their offense, even though limited with draft picks, but this was a multi-year build. The absolute theft of the Carolina Panthers for that number 1 pick, trade up Bryce Young, what the Bears got in return, and now bringing in Shane Waldron, first year OC, but a third. He spent 3 years in Seattle as the OC, part of the McVay tree. Last 2 seasons in Seattle, they had the 7th highest rate of design passes, and they use multiple tight ends on 38% of downs. That was 4th most in the NFL. Looking at that tight end room, even Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, Mercedes Lewis, that goes beyond the receivers and running backs we think about automatically. I see a lot of 12 personnel for Caleb Williams, so it's going to be your big roll out of the pocket, the highlights you see on a Sports Center, and then a lot of just smart throws underneath to tight ends with reliable hands to keep defenses honest. The Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer or 30 touchdown passer in over a century of football. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Williams gets to both. I think the Bears will flirt with but fall short of a playoff spot. That's my pick for them. But if they do go 9-8 and you got Caleb Williams in that 4,000-yard window with 28 to 32 touchdowns, he's your offensive rookie of the year. I know an end-of-year number of $2.25 doesn't present amazing value, but there's a reason that number is so short, and that's because it's such a great fit for a first-year player.
I'm trying to hold down my optimism and my excitement for that Caleb Williams-led Chicago Bears offense. I stared at that number very strongly. I also remember that I did go chalk with Bijan Robinson last year, which did not age too well as my offensive rookie of the year pick. But this is not your average
better
scenario.
Shane Waldron and Caleb Williams than Arthur Smith and Bijan Robinson.
Perhaps, but this is not your average, rookie scenario that you walk into. That you mentioned the receiving weapons, not just the big 3 receivers, but what they have at tight end, some explosive potential out of the backfield as well. There's every reason to believe, from everything that people have seen throughout preseason. Again, lucky enough to see that sideline action from Hallis Hall at training camp to what we've seen on the game and those moments of absolute artistry. And please do not sleep on Caleb Williams' ability to do the little things well. When given a clean pocket and asked to stand and deliver, he can absolutely do that, not just with accuracy, but pinpoint placement as well. Okay, my offensive rookie of the year pick is going to take a trip down to Jacksonville. It's been a drumbeat building. We talked about him a lot on the Fantasy Preview Draft Week special last week. I'm going back there. Brian Thomas Jr., you're getting him all the way, as of this morning, at 41-1, rookie receiver, Jacksonville Jaguars. I think he'll emerge as the top receiver. Evan Ingram is certainly there, but the top wide receiver target throughout the season for Trevor Lawrence. I think he's a much better fit for the role that they had Calvin Ridley pegged in 2023. The speed is real, really good size at 6'3", about 210 pounds, the 4.33 speed. We've seen some big chunk plays created already as he's built. Wasn't just he landed and it was Marvin Harrison highlights off to the finish line as we saw with the Arizona Cardinals. It was built throughout training camp, but he is looking absolutely fantastic. Beat writers down there in Jacksonville, down in Duval County are absolutely ecstatic with ecstatic, but they're glowing in their praise for what BTJ has shown already. Another LSU receiver, another stud coming out of that ridiculous just the litany of talent that they have at that spot that comes out of Baton Rouge. So Brian Thomas Jr., 41-1. I think he gets no shortage of targets, 130 plus targets vacated by Calvin Ridley. And I think as this season goes along, Brian Thomas Jr. shows exactly why he merits getting most of those sent his way.
Yeah, and it's going to be a concerted effort to get Trevor Lawrence in a better rhythm with his wide receivers. Last season, completed 60.4% of his passes to wide receivers. That was 25th of 32 qualified quarterbacks. So Press Taylor's, who's calling plays now instead of Doug Peterson, owner Shahid Khan said he prefers the head coach to call plays. That little internal debate. I mean, they had a season a couple of years ago in Jacksonville where Taylor called plays in the first half and Peterson in the second, or vice versa. They got to sort that out. But you got a guy like Brian Thomas with whom you can do a lot, and a team that, I think they're really starting to feel the pressure of expectation, especially with that Lawrence contract. Wouldn't surprise me if they fed the asset that they spent such high draft capital on in Brian Thomas Jr. Law's defensive rookie of the year. Last year I had Christian Gonzalez, and it looked so good for like 3 weeks until he got hurt at $11. I was tempted to go DB again with Quinyon Mitchell in Philly because I think it's a terrific fit in a position of need at $13. But I don't know if he's going to put up the requisite interception numbers. I mean, there's always a crapshoot of somebody, some rookie getting 8 picks and suddenly he's rookie of the year. This is by and large an edge rusher award. And this is a draft that, even though you could have argued the Falcons should have gone edge rusher at 8 instead of quarterback, we didn't have an edge rusher taken until the middle of the first round. But I'm going to go with Dallas Turner in Minnesota, replacing Daniil Hunter. $5 is the value there. Joint shortest with Laiatu Latu, which makes sense. A guy who instantaneously goes into a situation in which Minnesota's not going to win a lot of games. I mean, you can get them, I think, for like $2.40 to win 5 games or fewer. Not a lot of expectation in a division in which we expect the Packers, Lions, and Bears, oh my, to get better and better. The Vikings are kind of the odd men out without much of a quarterback, kind of odd men out with quarterback. But whilst he's on the field, I think Dallas Turner, opposite Jonathan Grenard, who they bring in from Houston, I think he does get that 9 to 11 sacks, and I do like him at DROY at $5.
You're right. It can very well be an edge rusher award, which is where my brain where my brain has gone. That's good form for week 0, that the English is already leaving my immense capabilities. I'm going to go with an edge rusher, but I am going a little further down the board again as well. But when we talked about explosive, speedy, talented pass rushers in this draft class, Turner was certainly one name. Chop Robinson was another one. Miami Dolphins getting looks there at $17 to 1, $17 even right now for Chop Robinson to make the splash play, make the requisite splash plays to steal this award away from some of the players that came off the board earlier than him. We know this was an offensive heavy rookie class. What I like there is that they've added some starch on the interior of the defensive line with the likes of Calais Campbell coming across. We'll see. We've got the dual comebacks of both Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb down there in Miami. But what Chop Robinson can do early, and with attention being taken by the interior of the defensive line, playing perhaps, I know there's a concerted effort in Miami. They spoke about it, about becoming a tougher defensive front. They know that there was talk out there that, when we got to winter football, there was some criticism about how well built they were on both sides of the ball, really, to handle that. There's an effort there. So you see that starch in the middle of the defensive line that allows the opportunity for someone like Chop Robinson, who can make a splash play in an instant. He doesn't need to be overwhelmed with playing 70, 80, 90% of the snaps right off the bat, and he's not going to get that opportunity. But I think he has a chance to be very efficient, very effective, very explosive, and as well get into that 8 to 10 sack range that can throw you into that defensive rookie of the year conversation.
And Laws, if you look at collectively that secondary, corner, safety, nickel, would it surprise you if that was the best secondary in the NFL come season's end? It wouldn't surprise me. So Chop Robinson would have his opportunity to get some coverage sacks where, doesn't necessarily win within the first half beat, blow past the right tackle and get in front of the quarterback. But if a quarterback looks up and it's blanket coverage everywhere, you can get 2 or 3 sacks, which in a competitive defensive rookie of the year race for a team that's going to be in a competitive division and a defense that should be putting up impressive numbers, that can tip the edge. So to support your case there, I think coverage sacks are in his future as well, because the secondary is so good in Miami.
Mm-hmm. Now, Phil, we're at the 53-minute mark, which means we have a chance to keep it under the hour mark. So let's keep it moving. Those are our award season ones. We're going to reel it back now to a little popular demand as we take a look for the first time at some in-game props coming up with the first 2 games on the schedule. Phil, where are you taking with us first as we look at this season opener that sees Kansas City Chiefs take on Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens?
Yeah, game kicks off at 10:15 a.m. in Sydney and Melbourne, Friday morning at Arrowhead. Chiefs, Ravens, an AFC Championship game rematch preceded by a live and fresh NFL Blitz with Sam Acho alongside the esteemed Phil Murphy. Laz, my tip for this game, I really wanted to go Samaje Perine anytime touchdown, Clyde Edwards-Helaire injury status, and what Perine can do out of the backfield, and the fact that Patrick Mahomes is indiscriminate with distribution. As of yet, Tab does not have a touchdown market for Perine, but keep an eye out on it. Anything $5 or longer, I'm going to say jump on that. Ooh. But I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson under half an interception in this game. This is a guy who only threw 7 picks all of last year, only threw an interception in 6 different games in the regular season, did throw one in the AFC Championship game, but absent L'Jarius Sneed. I'm not too overwhelmed by Kansas City's edge rushers. Their interior defensive line is great, but I think Lamar Jackson is going to make the responsible throws. I don't see him making mistakes. He is very strong in September, as is Patrick Mahomes. I expect both quarterbacks to be in form. Kansas City's favored in this game, so I do think Jackson may be throwing late, but give me under half an interception at $1.95.
Yeah, we're not going to touch any more of these interception markets after I know what's coming down here, and it's a personal shot. It's a personal attack. You started the season.
Got to
When
cross
it
the
comes,
map.
you started. Congratulations, you got to the Google Doc, which you locked me out of first. What a surprise. Okay, on this game though, you mentioned Patrick Mahomes can be a little indiscriminate with where the touchdowns go. I think they're going to make an effort. I think there is going to be a concerted effort in this game to showcase the new, just to let the league know that we're back to the explosive Kansas City Chiefs passing game. We got some new faces in town. We know that it's not likely that we see, or that Hollywood Brown in the early part of the season, that he's working his way back from injury. So I'm going towards Xavier Worthy. Anytime touchdown at $2.75. Could it be a deep, long, arcing Patrick Mahomes pass? Sure. Could they get a little crazy and give him an end around or something in the backfield with his combine record-breaking pace that we know at $2.75? Xavier Worthy, I think we get a highlight moment right off the bat as Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs, entire offensive brains trust and skill position group make it known that this isn't the grit and grind, ground this thing down into the ground and get out of there with a narrow victory. Kansas City Chiefs that we saw sometimes in the 2023 season that did lead to a Super Bowl victory. This is a return to the let it rip and let it fly KC Chiefs.
So Laz, plus odds for you there. And Saturday morning, we've got a second game. You will be in Bondi Beach for a cross with us on SportsCenter Saturday morning. That game also kicks off 10:15 a.m. local, preceded by a 45-minute NFL blitz. Word on the street is somebody who bleeds Kelly Green will be with me on set for that one. Laz will be in Bondi Beach for the watch party for that. Eagles and Packers will be in Chapada Brasil in a game we expect a lot of points. Total in this one, 48.5. Laz, I'm going with a tip we've never had on the show before. Jalen Hurts over half an interception at $1.85. He threw for an interception in 11 of 17 regular season games a year ago. They invested in the receivers, but Jalen Hurts, during that tailspin that the Eagles had late on in the season, teams were blitzing the life out of him. He couldn't figure it out. I think the Packers making that switch from the 3-4 to the 4-3 plays to their strengths. I do think they continue that added pressure to Hurts. We'll see how he handles it. I'm not giving a game tip. I think the variables of them playing in Brazil and having to travel so far, it's going to make it kind of wonky. But I do think there's a disconnect at some point between Hurts and his new receiving targets. Give me Jalen Hurts to throw at least one interception at $1.85.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with this one. This has been a staple pick of mine that has hit over and over and over again, repeatedly, particularly in primetime standalone games. But look, the equation for this is simple. Until Jalen Hurts and the Eagles prove that they can show that they can either handle the blitz or handle blitz looks and simulated pressures, that's what they're going to see from defensive coordinators around the NFL. And I think that continues, or starts and continues on from last season in week one over there in Brazil. For me, I am going to take a wander to the other side of the ball, but the same position, quarterback. We know what Jordan Love is capable of. Earlier in this show, you mentioned how they took the shackles off him and let him air that out and let Jordan be Jordan, let Love be Love, and really see some of those chunk gains make their way into the Packers' offensive system. What we've seen from the Philadelphia Eagles is a concerted effort to address the secondary that was absolutely a weakness last year, but rookie defensive backs get tested early. It takes time for chemistry to gel and to formulate with a new look secondary. And I expect Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love, the Green Bay Packers, and I think that 4 strong wide receivers that can be featured at any given time. Don't sleep on Dontavian Wicks out there. I expect them to challenge them deep. The longest reception for Jordan Love in this game I have at 40 yards or longer. I think he creates a 40-yard chunk play passing completion in this game. That's at an even 2-1. I think this is primed to, when you do have, look, you mentioned the wild card game early. We saw what happens when you challenge with the depth and the spread of weaponry. No, it might not be the absolute household names that the Houston Texans are rolling out there, the Cincinnati Bengals get to throw onto the field, but we've seen what Christian Watson can do. We know Romeo Doubs is there. Jaden Reed is a lot of people's favorite out of that squadron of receiving talent they have in Green Bay, and then throw in Wicks, who I mentioned earlier. Any number of them can find their way open and roaming in a secondary. So give me that one there. Jordan Love is going to hit a big passing completion there, 40 yards or longer. And who knows? maybe it's just a little screen pass to Josh Jacobs, who goes on a big, long galloping run.
We know Matt LaFleur loves his pre-snap motion, used it at the fourth highest frequency in the NFL last year with the fifth highest yards per play. And Laws, with that, we have our first game picks, popular demand, presented by Tab of the season.
What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
And Laws, with that, our NFL Brekkie Show 2024 season preview prop special comes to a close. But we are just getting started this season. We have live NFL blitzes on ESPN Thursday morning, Friday morning, Saturday morning, and Monday morning. And those lead into games Friday, Saturday, Monday morning as well. ESPN is your place for the NFL this season. For my good pal, Laurie Horesh, I am Phil Murphy. Kickoff has arrived. Thank you, as always, for joining us.